I'm Michael Bain, and welcome to Triggered This Week. Coming to you, of course, from the secret hidden bunker in the Rocky Mountains and Dragon House Studios. And this week, I wanted to do something special. You've heard me talk about Michael Ochsner, my good friend Mike Ox, a lot, because Mike has become an icon in the training industry, firearms training industry, because he doesn't do things the same way everyone else does. This is cutting edge stuff. His most recent book, Red Dot Mastery, which is Mike, my good friend Erick Gelhaus, of course, who did the Red Dot curriculum for Gunsight. Marcus Custer, a legend in U.S. Special Forces, great firearms trainer focusing mostly on military. So I've asked Mike to be here today to answer some questions, because I get a lot of questions from people going, really, red dots?
Yep.
Is this the path we have to take? Mike, good to see you. And is this the path we have to take?
Great to see you, Michael. And I would say no. It's the way that the industry is moving. But as far as individual shooters, no. Do what works best. If iron sights work best, use them. If red sights work best, use them. But there are some caveats there that I'd like to talk about while we're together.
Now, if I remember correctly, you didn't want to go to a red dot, right?
No.
This was not your driving force.
Not at all. And the big reason was I was already a IDPA master with a subcompact with irons. And all I heard was horror stories about it taking weeks and months to make the switch from irons to red dots. And so I was like, well, that sucks. I don't want to do it. And then I started seeing a huge increase in the number of students and the increase in the number of instructors who were using red dots. And I was like, well, if I'm going to help them, I need to figure this out.
When we talked about this book the first time, you said one of the focuses that you wanted was when you decided to switch to a red dot, you wanted to be able to do it in a single shot. That would strike me as maybe one of the hard. I've been shooting a red dot for a long time, and I can guarantee you when I went over from irons to a red dot, it took me more than one shot. How does that work, Mike?
Yeah, so it was basically, I call it a BHAG. I picked up that term, I don't remember who from several years ago, a big, hairy, audacious goal. And I thought, well, 6 weeks, 6 months, that sucks. One shot, that would be a whole lot better. So let's see how close I can get to one shot. And in a lot of cases, we've been able to do it. But basically, it's a matter of a consistent presentation that delivers the sighting system between your dominant eye and the target. Having your optic low enough so that the same presentation that delivers the irons between your dominant eye and the target will deliver the dot somewhere in the window when you present it. And the rest is kind of, it just happens. So the big trick, mounting is relatively easy. Some people have constraints because they are forced to use a plate because of the footprint that's on their slide. But the big key is the presentation, figuring out how do we automatically present the gun between our dominant eye and the target.
Now, this is something you've worked on a long time, the actual neurological aspects of shooting, of sighting, the things that we do. You talk about stable eye dominance, you talk about sensory integration. Those are not words you generally hear on the range during a training session.
Nope. I break things up into kind of a cooking model. And you've got a few different levels. You've got fast food and microwave. And then you've got food that was prepared by a cook. And then you've got food that was prepared by a chef. And different people like different levels, and different levels are appropriate for different situations. And for a lot of the people, a lot of the time, the microwave simple solution option works awesome. With dots, there's a few things that can become challenges. As an example, we think of having two types of eye dominance, right and left. Well, in reality, about 11% of the population has something called cyclopean eye dominance, where the brain combines the images from the eyes and creates a hybrid third image that doesn't exist in reality and tries to aim with it. And this is 11% of the population, so it's not incredibly rare. And you'll see people really struggling trying to figure out which eye is dominant when they have cyclopean dominance. And if we can stabilize it to a single eye, boom, all of a sudden people go from never having been able to hit targets at 15 to 20 yards with both eyes open to shooting very, very tight groups.
This week's Triggered is brought to you by Arms Corps Rock Island Armory. What's your passion? Rossi. The legend continues. Stoger. Everyday tough. Hunters HD Gold. They change so you don't have to. MTM Case Guard. Quality shooting sports accessories. And Ed Brown. The best money can buy for over 50 years. So this covers a lot more material than just here's how to pick up on a red dot. A question that I get all the time is can a red dot actually slow you down?
Absolutely. If you had a SIRT pistol here with a dot, if you present and the dot is not between your dominant eye and the target, and you're determined to put the dot on the target, then you can slow down if you don't know which way you need to correct. With irons, people can be pretty darn sloppy. All they have to do is throw the gun up somewhere in the general vicinity of the cone of vision between their eye and the target, and they can figure out which way to move it to line up the sights. A dot gives you a pretty small window where you can actually see the dot. And so that can slow people down. And again, it emphasizes the need for an accurate presentation.
In fact, I think maybe it goes a little farther than that, Mike. Maybe a dot is going to force you to finally have a perfect presentation every time the gun comes out of the holster.
Yeah, and that's actually one of the reasons I kind of alluded to it before. Regardless of whether people want a red dot or ever intend on putting a red dot on their pistol, it is totally worth it to use somebody else's gun and develop the presentation that lets you shoot a red dot. Because when you go back to irons, your presentation is going to be cleaner, crisper, and you're going to be way better with your irons than you ever were.
I have actually found that to be the case as well. I've had to shift back to a red dot to iron-sighted revolvers, and I noticed that I wasn't nearly as much of a problem as I might thought it would be. But people say it's really hard to go from irons to red dots, but coming back to iron sights, because you've cleaned up your presentation, it works out pretty well. I want to talk a little about mounting red dots because it's one of my hobby horses. The closer I can get the sight to the slide, the better I am. But when you talk about, I got this great big nice mounting plate, that's a problem.
Yes, it is. There's a couple of issues with mounting plates. One is that they raise the optic up. And if they raise it too far up from the sighting line of our iron sights that we put in practice on, then we're going to have to change our presentation in order to even see the dot. The other thing is the bigger the plate or the thicker the plate and the higher the optic is, the more leverage the recoil is going to have on the optic. And on the forces involved, it's really kind of crazy. We're looking at between 5,000 and 13,000 Gs of force every time we shoot the gun on the optic. So the lower we can have it, the less likely it is that we're going to have a catastrophic failure.
And none of us, of course, have ever had a catastrophic failure. Eventually, and I say this to everybody out there, eventually you're going to shoot a dot off the gun. And it happens because we maybe don't focus on mounting the dot on the gun as much as we actually should focus on mounting, given that 5,000 to 13,000 Gs.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it's critical that we do it and we do it right. We want to get the right size screws. We want to get the right quality of screws. So McMaster Carr, as an example, sells 121,000 PSI screws for mounting optics. And pretty good chance that you're not going to shear those and they're not going to break. We want to have the right length of screws, because if we use too short of a screw, it's not going to grab as much. And if we use too long of a screw, it's going to hit a spring in the slide, and that's going to be a catastrophic failure. Once we've picked out our screws and we've got the right length, we want to torque them correctly. And one way to do that is you take a screw and with hand tension, you screw it in until you meet resistance, and then back it out a full circle or a full rotation. Do the same with the other screw. In until you feel resistance, and then back it out a full rotation. And then using an inch-pound torque screwdriver, you do each of them back and forth a quarter turn at a time until you hit the right torque setting. And that torque setting can be pretty darn important, because if you're over torquing for the quality of the optic that you're using, it can damage the base of the optic. If you're under torquing, then it may shift when you start shooting. And that going back and forth, I kind of don't understand it, but as an engineer, I accept it because of my experience with lug nuts on cars, that you do a star pattern instead of going around if you want them to stay tight.
I know you and I can talk forever, and unfortunately we don't have, we can catch up with forever the next time. But one of the things that you told me is, since this book came out, you've gotten some really great feedback from people who've read the book and used it either to go to red dots or not go to red dots. Can you share some of that feedback with us?
Yeah. First off, people who have been struggling with red dots for months, being able to automatically present the dot between their dominant eye and the target immediately after using the drills. So as in, they read parts of the book in an afternoon and they go to the range and they're shooting better than they ever have before. We've had shooters write in who didn't really want to switch to a red dot, but thought they had to. And this made them enough better with irons that they're not switching anymore to red dots, which I'm absolutely fine. All I care about is delivering the bullet where it needs to go. Had long range shooters get 275% improvement in 1,000+ yard shooting with a couple of minutes of the red dot pistol drills. And then several officers who have been at risk of losing their job have, for the first time ever, been comfortable with both eyes open shooting and are shooting great now.
I think that's super. And I would like to go on, but there's a little blinking light on my screen that says shut up. Thank you for joining us. Tell us again, website where you can both get the book. And I know people are really interested in a lot of what's behind you right there, but this work that you've done is groundbreaking, and it's being used by some of the top shooters, top special forces people in the world. How do people find you?
The easiest way is red.mastery.com.
That's complicated, but I think we can do it.
Yes, it is.
Mike, as always, thank you for joining us, and I look forward to our next trade show together.
Thank you, Michael.